Corner of Cinema, episode number 177, being recorded on Thursday, August 21st, 2025, at 12:35 p.m. And just as I started recording, the cat has walked in and he wants rubs. So I'm going to have to multitask here, give him the rubs while I talk about these damn films. But anyways, guys, thank you again for listening in on this episode. If this is your first time listening to the show, thank you for taking a chance on it. And if you have listened to previous episodes, well, thank you for returning. This is the Cozy Corner of Cinema. We talk about films, we talk about life, we talk about literature, we talk about the arts, we talk about anything kind of basically encapsulating films, cinema, anything of the sort. And boy, there is quite a bit to talk about. So anyways, but I hope you guys have been doing well for yourselves. We are approaching the fall, which is great because we're going to get a lot of this is when we're going to start to get a lot of really solid films. And that's not to say we don't get exceptional films throughout the year. Of course not. I've said before, I already have a fairly confident 50 favorites of the year. And when I say confident, I mean that if suddenly, there are like no more films coming out this year, I would say, okay, the 50 that I have here, I think are all ones that I would stand behind. Maybe one or two I wouldn't, in terms of taking up some space. But otherwise, for the most part, I would say I've seen a lot of really exceptional films this year, and I'm happy overall. But, when we get into the fall and the winter, we start getting more films from from renowned filmmakers who hype up their next project. I just saw today that Edward Berger has a new film this year, which I don't know the name of, but Edward Berger did All Quiet on the Western Front, a really exceptional film, and he also did Conclave, which got a lot of critical acclaim last year, which I also thought was a well-done film. So we'll see what Edward Berger does next, but of course we have new films from Yorgos Lanthimos, Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to. I think Luca Guadagnino has a new film this year. I don't know if some of them are 2026 or coming out later this year. I would assume later this year since it's still August, but it's kind of hard to see, or it's kind of hard to tell, so to speak. But lots of good stuff coming up, and this is a lot to keep an eye out on. But anyways, let's see what we got here. And then as well, we have the, it's always fun because around this time we'll start getting the films from the Cannes Film Festival. And I forgot what actually won the Palme d'Or this year. I think it was Sound of a Fall. Is that what it's called? Or no, Next Anatomy of a Fall. There was another title that had like Sound of something in it, and I don't remember. But it looks like this film, Accident, won the Palme d'Or. Did I miss this? I don't know. This is like the first I'm seeing of this. This is wild, man. I don't know what I'm thinking of then. Something with fall in the title. And no, I'm not talking about Anatomy of a Fall. Oh, well. I'm not going to try to see if I can find it here. Oh, okay. It was Just an Accident. A film from Iran, France, and Luxembourg. Interesting. Well, hopefully we'll be getting a domestic release of that soon. I don't know anything about this film, but this will be watched in due time. It's always fun to compare the Palme d'Or winners to what wins the Best Picture. And it's not too often that they actually coincide. It's only happened 4 times. I'm trying to think. It was Marty, The Long Weekend, Parasite, and Anora, I believe, are the only 4 to have won both the Palme d'Or and the Best Picture Academy Award. Fascinating. I'm looking at the recent films here, man, and it's interesting. I kind of feel like Titane is not as talked about as perhaps when it was released, because the concept of that film is so wild, and I think because it took such a shift in the idea of it to the tone of it that maybe people weren't crazy about it. I don't know, but I think the filmmaker Julia, I don't know how to say her last name, but I think I read she has a new film coming out. She also did Raw in 2016. Yeah, she has a new film called Alpha, which probably played at Cannes. So interesting. Okay, I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah, Titane was one that when I first saw it, I was not, I didn't dislike it, but I was very ambivalent to leaning towards dislike. And then I rewatched it, and boy, I thought it just was so well done. I don't think it all works. I think it does have some tonal shifts in the first half that feel a little awkward with how strong the second half I think of that film. I think is so strong. The actual idea of it, the body kind of stuff, I think is one part of it that's interesting in its own right, but it's the character stuff, the relationship between that lead and the father. I thought was some of the was my favorite stuff in the film, and there's just like one line or like one scene towards the end that sums up their whole relationship, and I thought was so well done that you almost could have just taken the car stuff out of it, but solid stuff. And I've been wanting to rewatch Raw as well. I saw that theatrically, and it sort of had a similar reaction when I initially saw Titane, but I feel I will probably like that more on a second viewing. But anyways, I don't know how we got in the Palme d'Or. I don't know how we got there, but yeah, I was thinking about yesterday or the other day, sort of something that's been kind of kicking around in my head in terms of the amount of films that get released now. We're at a point now. It goes without saying, if filmmaking is so accessible now. It's so easy to get your hands on. Well, I would say most people probably, most people probably find it easy to get their hands on a camera phone. Finding some way to put their art out there. I'm reading about the other guy, the kid from the teenager who was directed his first film for A24. I think the dude's like 18 or something. It's a movie about the back rooms, and I'm just like, and I think I don't know much about the guy, but I think he like put his stuff on YouTube. He had like some animation stuff, or he had some like. He made like the lore of those backrooms kinds of videos. I may be misquoting on that, so don't quote me on that. But I'm like, yeah, somebody out there, putting their stuff out there, and then that's what they get. So it's a great time. Anybody can just grab a camera, do different kind of cool stuff. You don't have to bend to any kind of system. You can just put your art out there, and if it reaches an audience, great. And if it doesn't, then you just do what you can to reach that audience. But what I'm talking about before, because of that, is that I think. I don't want to say that it's a glut in a negative way, because if everybody has the opportunity to make the art and make the whatever it is, not even just films, but music or paintings or anything like that, make it the way they want to make it. They should have the ability to. But we're getting so many more films now. It's overwhelming. You have to dedicate so much time if you wanted to watch everything from a year. And I'm talking about, when I say everything, I mean internationally. That would take you, I don't even know how long, just for a single year. And how many films don't get the reception that perhaps they rise above the quality of some of the bigger, maybe Academy Award nominated or award winning types of films. But I think that kind of goes into what I was talking about a little bit last time, in terms of, I think, the commodification of films now, of the difficulty in getting films out there to reach an audience. And I'm not even I'm talking about more on a grand scale, so to speak. I'm not talking about dudes on like YouTube or independent filmmakers who are, putting their stuff online or submitting to film festivals. That's a whole other conversation in its own right. And truthfully, I'm not knowledgeable really about that. I'm not, I consider myself much more of a writer than a filmmaker. I've made films and all that, but it's more so films for me and acquaintances. I'm not, I've always said before, if people watch my stuff, that's great, but I'm also not interested in getting it out there to the masses, because I'm doing stuff that I, that we find funny, that we enjoy, that we can sit back and, and have a couple of beers and watch and laugh at. I prefer writing far, far more, because whether it's good or bad, it's all you. There's no one else kind of meddling in. If it sucks, it's on you. You can't blame someone else for your problems. If the writing is bad, then it's on you. So when it comes to the current independent filmmaking landscape, I'm not knowledgeable about that. There are smarter people than I, people who make films, people who put films out there that can provide a far more educated and comprehensive perspective than I can. But when I was talking about films like Familiar Touch and bringing to mind other films of recent memory, it brings me to what happens when a film is not even out of theatrical viewing, but it's out of any kind of general discussion online of, hey, this plays at a film festival, or hey, this is a film to look out for. There are some that will break through the mold even if they get a bigger distributor. But even something like, I guess even like music box films would be one where they are a bigger distributor. They can get theatrical viewings, but they're not going to play in all theaters. So I can look at two of my favorites this year, two films I've talked about on the show, Ephes and Familiar Touch. And even still, it's like unless you're in the know about them, unless you're in kind of like general sort of discourse that's maybe looking at, hey, these are, underseen films from 2025, or these are films streaming that you should be made aware of. It's other films that once they start slipping through the cracks, is when it starts to kind of get difficult to, one, find them, and two, turn people on to them. And I think a big part of that, the double-edged sword of streaming, has become that we have so many options, that there is so much that, for one, people talk about if you recommend them a film, is it streaming on somewhere? That's 9 out of 10 times that's the question that they'll ask you. If it's not readily available to stream, then they're not gonna. Most times they're not gonna watch it. If it's something that is only on a low quality rip online, or they're there, like, what, this isn't HD, this isn't Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, so I'm not going to watch it. And I think that is something that is missing with, and something I kind of want to go into here. I may be rambling a little bit. There's just sort of a lot of collected thoughts that I've been thinking about. But in terms of the physical media age, I think that there's something lost between the transition from DVD to Blu-ray. On the most general kind of scale, there was something lost when it came from VHS to DVD. Now, I'm younger, well, so to speak, I'm younger. I when I started collecting DVDs, it was probably when they were not starting out, but maybe only a 2005, 2006 is when I really started to seriously collect. I had some before, but that's when I'm still I'm in school at that point. I'm collecting a small little collection, and now, the amount of films that didn't get brought over from VHS to DVD is one thing, but I think a DVD had a fair amount of a lot of stuff that was on there. That crossover from DVD to Blu-ray has obviously lessened. Now we are getting a lot of stuff that maybe wasn't on DVD. That is true. We're getting good restorations of that. Recently I'm looking at Kino putting out Night of the Juggler, which is a really exceptional TV film. I don't even know if that had a DVD or not, truthfully, but now it's a readily available Blu-ray and 4K. And then when you get to 4K, for one, you're getting a lot of films that were either just on Blu-ray that are now getting over to 4K, or two, you're getting, well, let's say instead of or, and you're getting a lot less films being brought over from Blu-ray to 4K. So I think when it comes to Blu-ray now versus DVD, there seems to be, I feel, a unwarranted sort of, how do I want to put this? There's an unwarranted sort of vibe, I suppose you could say, on DVD of just sort of this archaic sort of technology. Whereas DVD does not have the technical benefits as Blu-ray. It can't store as much. They're far more prone to scratches, and I believe they're even more prone to disc rot. I truthfully I'm not as familiar on the specificities of disc rot, but there was a controversy a little while ago about a lot of Warner archive DVDs, or maybe it was just Warner DVDs, I don't even know, but a lot of them were experiencing disc rot. I don't know how widespread that actually was. I don't know if that was inflated or not. Truthfully, I shouldn't even comment on it, because I'm not, I really don't know. But when I look at Blu-rays now, and I look at some of the films that are coming out on Blu-ray, and especially the pricing, I think is something that is very tricky, because when we have a lot of companies now that are putting out a lot of just really not very good films, I mean, just cheap kind of junk stuff, that, it's one thing, hey, it's great they're getting restorations. I'm of the mindset where I think, everything should be, any I don't care if it's like, oh, this film sucks, they shouldn't even bother restoring it. It's like, hey, I think if these films should be restored, they should be put out there so people can see. But a part of that, when it comes to the pricing, to the quality, I think is something that was lost in terms of the transition over. Now with DVDs now, they are cheaper, even new release DVDs. And I'm going to Walmart, and you still see films that are getting released only on DVD and they're half the price of Blu-ray. They may not always have the best bonus features, and sometimes they don't even have bonus features, so that can be kind of hard to justify. But those films are getting put out some way. So it's a weird kind of general discourse I've seen where if it's not on Blu-ray, then it's sort of lesser. Because going back to what I was talking about before, in terms of these films being lost once they are out of the general kind of milieu. So like Music Box Films, they put out EFIS on Blu-ray. I assume they'll put like Familiar Touch on Blu-ray. There are those films that will go out on Blu-ray. And also, if you hear me being quieter, the cat's playing with the wire, and I really gotta have him stop doing that, man. Good lord, brother. But when I'm looking at something like, like Montana Story, like Between the Temples, these films are on DVD. They're cheap. At the time of this recording, I think Between the Temples is like $5. So it's sort of like, okay, they're getting put out there. They're not solely stuck on streaming, so at least we can actually have them. But it's sort of like, are people getting them? Are people, not willing to take a risk because it is a DVD? I'm not talking about solely for physical media collectors. I'm talking about, if Joe Schmo wants to watch it, we're at an age now where if it's, if they can't get it solely on Amazon or on, streaming or anything like that, then it's not going to happen. And I'm trying to multitask here because the cat is playing with the wire. That's not good. I don't need that. So sorry if I sound a little bit quieter. Anyways, I lost my train of thought. My point is that no matter what, from the theater to the household, there is something lost between all of these films. There is something that is it's tricky because it's like how do you turn people on to these films? How do you get people to them if it's not readily available? With DVDs, they were readily available. You could go and stores were selling DVDs. People could take risks on DVDs. Best Buy was selling them, and now they don't even sell any. I don't even know if they sell any physical media besides video games. And that's the troubling part. Is that one? How are people seeing these films? If it's not on Blu-ray, are they getting it? Are they going to actually get the DVD? If it's not readily available on streaming, are they going to get a DVD? If it's not readily available at all, are they going to take the time to try and find them? And I don't know. And I think that's what happens, that a lot of these films that end up coming out that are underrated or underseen, I think it's solely in part, not solely in part, let me put it this way. It's not in part that there's so many films coming out. I think that's always going to happen. It's just now we have a lot of them. But it's a matter of, like, are people willing to take a chance on something that isn't, in a big theatrical screen? You can have, unless you're at a theater that has a bunch of screens, that can have 20-odd screens, that'll play, the bigger stuff and the smaller stuff. It's like, how are people seeing them? Why is it... Is it only going to be talked about again if it pops up on a streaming service? Is it only if you go on Netflix and you see, this maybe film, this really good film that people don't talk about or something? I don't know. I'm thinking about what happens to a lot of these films. I think about just so many of my favorite films the past couple of years that I truthfully don't know many, if any, people that have seen them. And is it just because they don't want to see them? Is it just that they don't know anything about them, so they don't want to take a risk? I don't know. I'm just thinking for myself because I'm seeing some of these films. I'm looking at some of my favorites of the year so far. And, besides the big kind of 2,000-plus theater releases that are good in their own right, it's the films that I mentioned on the show, like Architecton, like Grand Tour, like Seed of the Sacred Fake, just these random films. It's like, what happens to them when they're out of the general kind of consensus? And there's so many films. There's such a wide range of films that obviously there are going to be no shortage of them left in the dust. But I think it is important to kind of talk about these films and get them out there, so that even if somebody doesn't like it, they are still in the know about it. Because when you have Blu-rays, I think it's a little harder for people, justifiably so, to take a risk on a blind buy or on a blind watch, unless it's something that is like, your friends are talking about it, or people, because you're going to spend $25-$30 on a blind buy that may be just a stinker. I don't know, that's your prerogative. I know there have been films that I've bought, even though I don't have the intention of rewatching anytime soon. I mean, why people collect is their own prerogative. They have different reasons. Whether they're gonna rewatch them, or they just want to library them, it's their prerogative, their call. But it was easier with DVD to be able to take chances on these films. And I know that with DVDs, and when like you'd have new releases be like 20, $25, and I get that. So I'm talking about the pricing in comparison to now, where, a new Blu-ray, I'm not even talking about like a boutique one, but let's say a new Blu-ray is what, like $20 or so, and then the 4K would be like 25 or 30, and then the DVD of that would be 15. It's much easier to take a chance on that 15 and get two of them for the price of one 4K. Now you're sacrificing image quality, you're sacrificing, the durability of the disc, just to be able to watch the film. But there are films that I'll buy on Blu-ray that I don't have that intention to. Something like, I got my Vinegar Syndrome ordering yesterday, and something like Ghostlight from 2 years ago. I don't have any intention of rewatching anytime soon, but I wanted to own that film. But I'm still paying $25 for that disc. Now I could go and watch the special features, and I could, listen to the commentary on that. But there are so many films now to buy, and there are so many films to really, go through, that to properly spend the time on each individual disc. I mean, truthfully, if you were going to spend that money and you weren't like a huge collector or anything like that, you could easily, I don't know if you guys can hear somebody's mowing the lawn outside. You could easily spend a long time on just one disc. I mean, you look at what some of these labels are doing, the hours of bonus features they're putting on it. If you were to spend, $30 on a disc, depending on where it's coming from, you're going to get a lot out of it. You're going to get a whole film school out of it. You're going to get like a book and special features and audio commentaries. That DVD is just that a lot of them later on just didn't have, when they weren't concerned about packing the disc with a lot of stuff, with a lot of content. I remember listening to an interview with the director of the first Fast and Furious movie, and I forgot his name. I do apologize. He was talking about how important it was to get for the DVD, not just for the release date around Christmas, but of just how much they could store on that disc. The fact that you have an optical media now, as compared to analog with VHS, where you could have stuff on the same track. So you could be like, okay, well, after the film, you could have a behind-the-scenes thing, or you could have a music video or something like that. And I mean, I know Laserdisc had like commentaries and stuff like that. That's different. But I'm talking about solely for DVD. It's like, wow, not only do you own this film, you own the film school on this, that Blu-ray does offer. So you are kind of trading, price point of a DVD to get not as much to, spending more and getting more out of it. But I do think that the limitations of seeing as many films, or of, exposing yourself to more films, I think it's more limited, because if you're getting two boutique titles for what, $30 each, like $60, and how many DVDs can you get with that? I don't know. But that's also if you are actually even collecting any kind of physical media. Always been very pro and proactive in encouraging that, and making sure that these films aren't lost, and that they are restored, and they are, there's not a game of where is it streaming, where can I find it online, it's not on this thing, it's on this thing, it's not on anything at all, we're not even going to watch it. I understand that some people see that, I get the pros and benefits, or the pros and cons of streaming, but I think that the film commodification and sort of the overwhelming aspect of streaming has kind of, I think, I wouldn't say crippled a lot of film watching, but I think it has made it a bit trickier to, get these films out there if they're not readily available. With that said, though, I mean, we are living in a really great age of physical media. The amount of films that are getting properly restored, we're getting companies, boutique labels that are fully intent on releasing full versions of films, on getting, plenty of bonus features out. So is there a conclusion? Is there a point to what I'm saying? Also, if you can hear the lawnmower in the background, I'm not going to keep pausing it, but I'll try to talk over if I can. Is there an overall answer to what I'm saying? No, this is more just kind of what I'm thinking about in terms of how films get watched now, how contemporary films get watched, really, more to speak, of just some of the really exceptional films I've seen this year, And sure, you can promote it on, your streaming service and say, now streaming this film. But I think that without that general kind of consensus and talk, I think there is something lost there, undoubtedly. The cat's both looking at me like I'm a crazy person. I might be a crazy person. I don't know. I don't have an answer to it. It's just my rambling thoughts for this one. So maybe I made sense. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. This is just what I've been seeing. And what gets a little troubling is that just these films come and go without any talk, and they don't make the best of lists at the end of the year. They're not talked about. They are, because they get overwhelmed by the big kind of Academy Award nominated films, and they get overwhelmed by the big 2,000 plus theatrical films, and it's sort of like, man, where do these films kind of go into? We're at a point now where so much is being put out on a grand scale and on a smaller scale that it's like, man, there's probably some great independent film made in Montana that for like $2,000 that probably is on some guy's YouTube channel, and I'm sure it's probably one of the best films of the year. But how do I find out about it? How do people find out about it? And just getting the word out, man. Just talking about it, just having that general kind of discourse. Discovering new films, doing research. I mean, there's no right answer. It's just contemplative thoughts, and the cat's looking at me like I'm crazy. That's alright, I've been called worse. But I'm going to cut it off here, man. I kind of got what I wanted to say out there. Maybe not totally cohesively, but maybe you can stitch together what some of my points are and draw your own conclusions from there. I'm just one guy. These are just my opinions, so I'm not trying to act like some arbiter of anything. Just what I've been seeing with the film kind of releases that have been coming out and what happens to them. But anyways, guys, hey, you guys take care.